Alright, so Crimson Desert finally dropped, and the reviews are already looking kind of all over the place. I've been scrolling through some of them and noticed an interesting pattern. One side is on the "this is incredible" team, while others just think this is complete dog water. It just leaves me wondering, are we playing the same game at all or what? I'm currently playing the PC version on a 4070 Ti and 32 gigs of RAM. Fairly good on mid to high settings, no real bugs, just an early crash, but nothing else so far. I'm about 10 hours in already, and so far it's fun and engaging, but I want to see different points of view on it. And so I started going through a bunch of the early reviews. Some high scores, mixed ones, and even some of the lower ones. And they're not just a little different, some even seem like they're playing a different game entirely. Lots of reviewers are praising the same things other people are complaining about. Combat, the open world, systems, all of it. So let's go through some of these and try to figure out why opinions are so split right now. Alright, so starting with the positive side. The Forbes review from Paul Tassi is probably the clearest example. He's over 100 hours into the game, hasn't finished the main story, and doesn't even seem to care. That's kind of the main takeaway at least. He's not trying to rush through it for the sake of the review, he's just playing it because he wants to keep playing it. And what he keeps coming back to is the scale of the world. Not just that it's big, but that it actually feels full of things to do. There's always something pulling you away from what you're doing. You head towards a quest, get distracted, then something else pops up, and suddenly you're doing something completely different. And from what I've played so far, yeah, that part tracks. Even early on, it's very easy to get sidetracked. He also points out the lack of handholding. No clear path, no constant direction. The game just kind of lets you figure things out. And for him, that's a big positive. I tend to agree. I'm kind of tired of all these yellow paints all over games nowadays. Although I do feel like the tutorials tell you everything you really need to know. Either way, it makes exploration feel more natural, more earned. Now, what's interesting is he's not the only one saying this. Because when you look at another positive review, this one from Vice, it's almost the same core ideas, just pushed even further. That review leans really hard into the scale of the world, talking about how big and varied it is, and especially that moment where you jump from the sky islands and see everything open up below you. That's one of those moments where you actually stop for a second and take it all in, really. They also focus a lot on the freedom. Same idea, no hand-holding, no strict direction, you're just dropped into the world and left to explore. And if you're into that kind of design, it works really well. Combat is another thing both of them highlight, not in a super technical way, but more in how it feels. It's a bit messy and chaotic, but it has a lot of impact. You're knocking enemies around, interacting with the environments, and when it clicks, it's really satisfying. And then there's just the amount of stuff in the game. This is where both reviews really start to overlap. There's tons of systems layered on top of each other. Skills, crafting, exploration, side content, all of it. To the point where it almost feels like a single player MMO, which I believe was Pearl Abyss's idea all along. It gives you more to do, more ways to play, more reasons to stay in the world. So, if you just look at these reviews on their own, this sounds like a huge win. Massive game with tons of content, a lot of freedom, something you can just get completely lost in. But even here, you can already feel that some of this might not work for everyone. And once you get into the mixed and negative reviews, those same strengths start getting flipped into problems. So yeah, this is the really high-end takes. People putting in 80 to 100 hours in and coming out with really positive reviews. But not everyone landed there. This is where things start to feel a lot more grounded. Because when you look at some of the more middle-of-the-ground reviews, like GameSpot, Game Informer, you start hearing the same praise, but with a pretty noticeable but attached to it. Like I mentioned, I'm only about 10 hours in, so my opinion may change as I get further into the game. Next up is GameSpot. They basically say when the game is just letting you explore and fight, it's incredible. That's exactly the kind of thing this game does really well, the make your own moment feeling. And the combat too, they really lean into that, calling it brutal, flexible, almost like you're just improvising constantly with everything around you. That part definitely lines up for me so far. When everything clicks, it feels amazing. But then they start talking about everything around that, and that's where it kind of slips. How important is a story in an action-adventure game anyways? I would say very, and for them it's just there. Not bad at all, just not really doing anything. Characters show up, things happen, but it didn't really seem to connect for them. Here I'm not so sure. I think it's kind of an issue with so many open world games. You care about some characters, some are only in it for a bit, some throughout the entire experience. Heck, even The Witcher 3 has some shitty characters. And then there's the systems, inventory, healing, quest design. This is where multiple reviews start saying the same thing. that it can start getting a bit tedious. Not broken by any means, just constantly getting in your way, managing items all the time, stopping what you're doing to cook food just to survive, quests that feel like a checklist instead of something natural. So far, I've experienced a few of these, but they're more on what you do for the townsfolk and not so much for the main story or even the bigger side quests. Game Informer takes that even further. They basically describe the whole game as a really impressive world that's kind of buried under too much stuff. Something like a gourmet Michelin star meal with no seasoning. Their main issue isn't that the game is bad, it's that it's trying to do everything. Base building, survival systems, crafting, combat, puzzles, exploration, story, all stacked on top of each other. And instead of it all coming together, it starts to feel like the game is just stretched too thin, like nothing is fully refined. They mentioned that even the combat, which is one of the best parts in my opinion, can get a bit messy later on. Too many abilities, too many inputs, enemies everywhere, and it kind of turns into chaos instead of something tighter. I don't know about that. I've always thought the more options you get, the better. And then they talk about the bosses. This comes up a lot too. They seem to be all over the place for them as well, like really punishing, kind of unclear, and sometimes just not fun at all. And then there's the pacing. This might be the biggest thing. A lot of what they're saying is that the game just kind of wastes your time. Not intentionally, but because of how everything is designed. You know, the normal loop, you're traveling long distances, grinding materials, redoing things, managing systems constantly, and it starts adding up. To the point where they're saying this could have been a 50 or 60 hour game, but it turns into 100 plus because of all the bloat. Then things start to get a bit weirder, because once you start looking at the lower scores, it's not just, yeah, it has some issues, it's people acting like the whole thing basically falls apart. I don't agree with that at all.
Welcome to our
Like, take the VG247 review. They basically say the game looks incredible, but underneath it doesn't really come together. They go after the story, Cliff as a character, the overall cohesion, everything. And I sort of get what they're trying to say, but I think they're overstating it quite a bit. The story isn't blowing me away or anything yet, but it's not this broken, confusing mess either. It's just fine so far. It feels more like a setup, and with a game this big, I kind of expected that. Same with Cliff. He's not Geralt or anything, but acting like he's this completely inconsistent or pointless character already, that feels like jumping the gun a bit. And then the UI stuff. Yeah, okay, the inventory isn't exactly amazing, but the way some of these reviews talk about it, you think it completely ruins the game. It really doesn't. It's just a bit clunky. That's it really. But then I found a really negative review from Critical Hits, and this is where I just kind of stopped taking it seriously. Because they basically go all in. Everything is bad. The story is terrible, the combat is shallow, the world is empty. It's just non-stop. And I don't know, man, that just doesn't line up with what I've actually played. Calling the combat shallow is probably the one that stood out the most to me. Even early on, there's clearly a lot going on. Different abilities, different ways to approach fights, all the physics stuff. You might not like how it feels, sure, but saying there's no depth there, that definitely feels off. And the empty world thing too. That one doesn't really make sense when pretty much every other review, even the mixed ones, are praising the world as one of the best parts of the game. It just feels like one of those reviews where someone hit a point where the game stopped clicking for them, and instead of saying that, they just kind of turned on the whole thing. It might even just be for clickbait, to be honest. So yeah, I'm gonna be straight about it. I don't agree with the negative takes at all. Not saying the game is perfect, but the way some of these reviews frame it, like it's this broken or badly designed experience, that hasn't been my experience at all so far. And I think part of it is just that the game isn't really holding your hand. It's doing a lot of different things at once. For some people, that's gonna be a problem, but that doesn't automatically mean it's bad. So at this point, you got people calling it one of the most ambitious games ever made, others saying it's messy but impressive, and then a few acting like it completely falls apart, which kind of leaves one big question. What's it actually like when you're just playing it normally? Not 100 hours in, not reviewing it, just jumping in. That's where it gets really interesting. So, where am I at with it right now? As I said a few times already, I'm basically still at the beginning of the game, but I'm sitting at somewhere around an 8. And I feel pretty good about that. The biggest thing for me so far is just how engaging it is to play. I keep getting pulled off whatever I'm supposed to be doing, and I'll head somewhere for a quest, see something in the distance, go check that thing out, and then suddenly I'm doing something completely different 30 minutes later. That part feels really strong.
Mother! She would always go on and on about you so fondly. front of me! Her very own son!
The world is doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. It just makes you want to explore, and more importantly, it doesn't feel like it's forcing you to do so. You kind of just end up doing it naturally. Combat is still opening up, but even this early on, it's still really fun. It's got that slightly chaotic feel where you're just still figuring things out, but you can tell there's more depth there once everything unlocks. I haven't hit that point yet, but it feels like it's building towards something. The story, it's definitely there. It hasn't grabbed me yet, but it's not bothering me either. Right now, it just feels like a reason to move through the world, and I'm fine with that at this stage. The only things that have stood out as a bit rough are some of the smaller systems. Inventory, menus, little things like that. Nothing major, just stuff you tend to notice. So yeah, around an 8 out of 10 right now, and I could definitely see it going higher. If the systems keep opening up, if the combat really expands the way it feels like I think it will, and if the game keeps giving me reasons to explore the way it has so far, I could even see this pushing into a 9. But that's gonna depend on how it holds up over time. Because a game this big, that's the real test. Anyway, that's where I'm at so far. If you've been playing it, let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you're no-lifing it and already further in. I'm curious if it holds up or starts to fall off. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and have a great one.
Are you alright?
You rescued me from my own twisted shade. Thank you, truly. But I fear this is not the end.